Okay, so I said we were going to go to the floods, but hey, let's hold on and let's talk about the Nigerian child.
All right, so talking about the Nigerian child, just a few days back, May the 27th, Nigerians all over celebrated children. There was funfair. I mean, we bought them candies, we did all sorts, bought them clothes. Yes, but some may say that's a bit artificial. They say children are the leaders of tomorrow. There are deeper things that we could do for our children. A lot of children the world over, especially in Africa, at the receiving end of some of the consequences of the things that we're not doing right. There's a report here that says, by Save the Children in Nigeria, says up to 90,000 children could die this year from severe malnutrition. That's just one threat to the Nigerian child. There are threats of abuse and violence, all those kind of things. I mean, violence and all of that. And even the conditions within which we are raising these children. We have two beautiful minds that will be talking about the Nigerian child with us today in the studio. To my right here, I have Dr. Princess Olufemi Kayode, child rights activist. Thank you for coming on the program. We also have Barrister Joy Etokudo, a member, Lagos Child Protection Network. Thank you for being part of this conversation.
Thank you for having me.
So if I can start with you, being someone who works in this jurisdiction, what concerns you most about the future of the Nigerian child?
Okay, my main concern would be the impact that the present economy is having on families, in the sense that now both the father and the mother scarcely have time for these children. And because this time is not there, most times they are not acquainted with what their children get into or what is happening to their children. Children these days get involved in different things from school, even in churches, even in the mosques. Everywhere, is no longer safe for the children. So when parents now do not have time for the children, it's a major concern for me, especially as a parent, because my take always is that child vulnerability is adult irresponsibility. Because when a child becomes vulnerable to any attack, there's an adult that have become irresponsible in a particular sense. So when we have time to look after these children, when we are bothered about the safety of our children, it will go a long way to curb the insecurity. It will go a long way to curb the abuses that, is happening everywhere now on children. So my major concern is that due to the economic situation in the country, the mother is out there, the father is out there, and most times, we leave our children in the hands of caregivers that we don't even know much about. We know the right mechanic to fix our cars. You say if it's a Toyota, you want to take it to somebody that repairs Toyota. Do you understand? If it is Mercedes-Benz, you want to take your time to find out if this particular mechanic can fix that particular car. But when it now comes to the caregivers that will take care of your children, when you are not there, there tends to be this rush, okay, just find somebody for me, anybody that comes. We really don't take time to know whether this person has the right skills, the adequate mind to take care of that particular child, because we cannot raise children, in the same way. Every child, you might have like 4 children in a home, but you need to know those children individually, and there are ways that you can raise those children, separately, though in the same house. But because we don't take time to know the person that we are putting in charge of our children, a lot of things happen and we don't know. So my major concern would be that these days children are left alone, and before you know what is happening, You come back home and you don't even know your kids anymore.
Okay, so she has painted the picture what the economy is doing to families and by extension the children. And some of these things happen when the parents are not watching or are not paying so much interest in the children. Let's talk about some of the things that UNICEF has said and have some figures here that every Nigerian child, or 6 out of every 10 children, experience some form of violence. Yes. 1 in 4 girls and 10% of boys have been victims of sexual violence. And you know, that's the one that breaks my heart the most. Sometimes I don't even have the guts to read the stories, because as I read, I'm trying to picture and saying to myself, is this happening? So tell us some of those things that the children face that we, the adults, we are not looking at now, and then the children become more and more vulnerable.
Oh, okay. First, we're looking at the 21st century. It's a different generation. It's highly sexualized for children compared to when we were growing up. You know, when the highest thing you could see in a movie was a kiss. I'm not talking of even deep kiss. I'm talking of just a kiss, which with our parents we couldn't even look at that age. But today, you have porn, you have gay being sold, subliminal messages are everywhere for children. And so, and as parents, majority are not looking, and even as government, or let me use adults, let me just use the word adults, because the government is run by adults, the schools are run by adults, the religious, the places where children go to are manned by adults. And all of this set of people are still not in the reality of the 21st century that we're in. In terms of what is even happening globally, Nigeria is not really playing any fantastic role regarding children. In 1999, WHO declared child sexual abuse a global epidemic. We did not do anything in Nigeria. In 2004,
that was like
the same,
1999, like 20 years ago.
It was already declared an epidemic. In 2004, the African office of WHO declared child sexual abuse a silent epidemic for children having HIV. Now, it's not mother to child transmission. We're talking about children having HIV from sexual assault, rape, and whatever you want to call it. So we are not, the children are living in this world. Porn is available. On the street, it's 100 naira to pick even Nigerian porn or global porn in DVD. It's available. It's available on the net. Nobody is manning what their children are watching. And when we're talking about the mobile generation right now, we're talking about more than 30 million or 40 million Nigerians have mobile, and we're talking about children having access to this. We're talking about cable. We're talking about cartoons that have adult content. We're talking about different messages being sent to these children, and we as parents will watch these things with them, and you find that the life of children are not being really weighed in terms of the future, that they actually own the future. And we have a lot of messed up children. We're talking about child sexual abuse, we're talking about adults molesting, but we're forgetting that the majority of abuse going on now is happening between children to children. You're having more sexual assault happening between children to children. I think as of 2016 or 14, between 2014 and 16, I can't remember exactly, Scotland Yard declared the youngest child molester was an 8-year-old girl and a 5-year-old boy. So we're talking about it's happening in our generation now. But we don't call it abuse, because it's more like, because the age, and they probably won't, even if they appear before the law, they're not going to receive adults. But we're already having some children facing adult sentence in some countries in the world, based on the gravity of what is happening. I can't even stomach it anymore, because before I get a lot of gang rape videos of school children raping one another, and all we're trying to do is try to, recognize the female face so that the child can access help. Because the boys won't show their faces, but they show the whole act. A lot of that is happening in Nigeria now. So parents are not conscious, and then the government, we're not putting in place things that will help monitor online activity. Our cyber crime laws need to look into child. There was still a report last year that Nigeria is not focusing on child pornography. online. We're not. It's happening in our space a lot. People who also pass this thing, see what one maid is doing. It's a crime. And we keep passing. I block you. Even for me, I don't download anything. It's my choice to download whatever he sends to me because I don't want to watch anything because it's like you say, it's traumatic. And I think the majority part is that we are in a denial state of the things happening to our children. We're in a denial state, and like she said, the economic is a factor to majority of families. We're not talking about the poor families. That is a factor. But it is happening. And it's not only happening to children of the poor. It has no respect for your status, has no respect for where you live. Children are exposed, and majority of those who abuse them or who expose them to these things are people they know, over 90%. And so it's a battle of really starting from the family and the government helping and corporate bodies taking stance, particularly those who serve in the area of children, products, to really take a stand that we need to face this fight because Nigeria needs to stand tomorrow and it will take the children. And when majority of them are already messed up, that's a big problem.
So children who should feel safe at home,
they're not safe.
And schools with family members, you find that those are some of the areas that these things occur.
Yeah.
So let me put it to you. How do we get out of this? How do we make the Nigerian child safe?
Okay. Talking about how we can make the Nigerian child safe, adults around need to pay more attention. For example, sexual abuse. For sexual abuse, there are stages. I read it as the stage of profiling. 1, before an abuser comes on a child, he profiles the child in the sense that they look for the weak ones. If there are a group of children, the abuser looks for the one that is withdrawn, looks for the one that is likely not to tell the parent, looks for the one that the parent does not have time for. When an abuser is actually scared of a very expressive child or a courageous child or a confident child. So they look for the withdrawn ones. They look for the ones with low self-esteem. So parents, we need to build our children's self-esteem. We need to make them feel loved and feel wanted. Because most times, these children go to the abusers because they want to be accepted, they want to be loved, they want to, they want to feel cared for. So these abusers, they profile the children and then they pick the one they think they can prey on. And then 2, they begin to groom the child. You begin to hear things like, even sometimes parents are around. An adult starts calling a 4-year-old girl, my wife. That's grooming. What is in a 4-year-old child that you see, that makes you say, my wife? You say, my friend. Some even go as far as saying, this is my girlfriend. You shouldn't say that to a child. So that is grooming. They are trying to win the child over. After profiling, they go to the stage of grooming. They groom the child. Every time they say, oh, uncle bought you chocolate. And most times it's the people, like she said, people they call uncle, people they, neighbors, people aunties. They can trust, even aunties, yes. People around them that the parents feel safe with that end up abusing these children. So after grooming the child, then the actual abuse takes place. That's the 3rd stage. Then the 4th stage is the stage of manipulation. They begin to manipulate the child. Don't tell. If you tell, you will die. If you tell, I will kill you. If you tell, this will happen, that will happen. It is only when they succeed in manipulating the mind of that child, then the 5th stage comes in, which is continuous abuse. A child that an abuser has successfully, manipulated, and they see that the child didn't tell any adult, they continue to abuse the child. So if parents, give room for children to express themselves, because most times we are too busy with our work. When the child comes home and says, Mommy, I want to tell you something, he said, I'm busy. Let it be. I'm busy. Go, come back. I'm busy. When I have time, I'll call you. We end up not giving audience to these children. So that's one way we can protect, the children. And then we should take our time, do your due diligence to know what is happening in the school. Find out who is teaching your daughter. Have the number of your child's teacher. You know, make the child feel like, you know, whatever happens in school, you can either speak to me or speak to your teacher. Attend parent-teachers forum.
That is thinking that the teacher is not a predator too.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. One of the ways that, you will know all of these things is for you to have a relationship with your child's teacher. If you know the child's teacher, and, there's the way you be talking with the teacher also knows that I can't tamper with the child of this one. You make your stand clear, but very politely. There are questions you ask a teacher. How is my child doing? I hope everywhere is safe. I hope you don't sometimes leave the class and go out gisting with your colleagues. I do that. I said that to my children's teachers. And that sends a message to them that I left my child in your custody. If anything happens, I'll hold you responsible. So when we have all of this in place, we can help to curb all these abuses that come on the child.
I'm sure we'll go on the break very soon, but I would want us to talk about the physical and emotional abuse of children too, because that can predispose them to this sexual abuse. We'll take this break and we'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. So we're talking about the Nigerian child, and before we went on that break, I was talking about, yes, we've said a lot about sexual abuse. Physical abuse. I saw online where I think the girl is supposed to be a maid to one woman, and the woman used iron, and there was blood all over. And I was thinking, what kind of, okay, let's assume the child has erred somehow. Yeah. How do you discipline that child without having to inflict such injuries on the child? Let's talk about physical and emotional abuse.
Yeah, physical abuse. A lot of the reports we get are around children who actually do not belong to the abuser. You're talking about maids, you're talking about family members who come and live. We have all this foster family thing we've had a long time. And then, of course, you also have stepchildren that happening. But you rarely find a place where it is the actual mother who is actually inflicting.
It happens,
harm.
maybe not
It happens,
much.
not as much,
Yes.
I'm saying, in terms of looking at the rates. But here we're talking about anybody who does this, you know that they're also broken people. And when I say broken, there's something not right with their psychic. And so we're talking about emotional. They are emotionally balanced themselves. That doesn't mean that, when we talk about emotional issues, people think it goes about to mental health issues. They also either have experienced some form of abuses themselves as children, and that is what the retaliation. And of course, you're looking at the economical factor too. There are many things that can trigger off people inflicting injury on children. But we're actually having a lot of it. Like we said, 6 out of 10 have faced one form of abuse. Now, that's not all sexual abuse. You're talking about trafficking also. Even people who give their children off to somebody else to go and,
which falls
put
back
your
to
children
the
up. It falls back to the economic
factor.
Because why would a child leave their parents to go serve somebody else? And all of these things are things that have laws. I always tell people, if you take a maid under 18, if you're caught, because the essence is, have not been caught. But there are people who have, there are corporate people who have gone to jail for just having a child, a minor as a maid, or as for trading in your shop. So the essence is, the damages that this does to children, all the forms of abuses, the scars are scars that, God help us, we are trying to push mental health awareness in the nation today, because some of us were also violated that way when we were raised as children. But then we didn't see it as abuse. But today, you know that if 1/3 of what was done to us is done to the children of today, you actually go to jail, even as a parent.
That's right.
Because the kind of, in terms of saying they wanted to discipline us, but you look at it, you don't give what you don't have. That's where we are. We need to look into massive awareness on teaching those who are in the rural areas not to release their children out. Looking at family planning issues. There's so many factors.
I was going to say
you're having so many children you can't take care of.
Fertility rate in Nigeria is, I think, 5.8 or so.
Yeah.
That means a woman in her lifetime can have as much as 6 children.
Even more.
So, yes. And so you have 6, 7, 8 children, you want to say, okay, you can go and stay with Uncle Bako, or you can go and
somebody
stay with
will come and tell you they want to help you.
And Auntie Bosta, you know, things like that.
You just leave your children out, and those children face a lot of, even the trauma of not even staying with your parents is one emotional damage.
Can we look at it this way? So you've talked about stages of abuse.
Yeah.
Some children are raised in very balanced and hinged homes, and so their home front is not a threat, but they get abused outside. How can you spot a child who is already under attack?
When the child is withdrawn, you know there's something wrong. You know, a child that used to be lively now talks less, plays less, eats less, you know, something is wrong. And, you know, most times we look at physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and we forget the other type of abuse, which is neglect. There's neglect. Neglect is a form of abuse. A child is withdrawn. It's not eating much. Nobody is taking notice of it. It's neglect. A child is no longer excited about going to school. It's neglect, because it's either there's bullying happening in school, or there's emotional abuse happening in school, or, you know, there is physical abuse happening there. When a child begins to say, I don't want to go there, we need to be careful. I don't want to see Auntie Jane. We need to be careful. I don't want to see Uncle John. We need to be careful. Something is already happening. But because the adults these days really do not have time for these kids, it just gets into the full-blown abuse. And then you were asking about physical abuse and emotional abuse. What we must know is that physical abuse can heal. Emotional abuse, sexual abuse can heal to an extent due to counseling and all of that. But you see, emotional abuse, it takes a very long time to heal. For example, I can still tell you about my primary 5 teacher. I can still tell you about my primary 3 teacher. That's to show you how far back these things, you know, that happened to me have stayed with me. My primary 5 teacher, she was excellent, very good to me. My primary 3 teacher, she knew me, she understood me, she knew what I could do and what I couldn't do. And when people were saying, oh, this is what Joy did, she said, no. Although I was away for maternity leave, I don't think this can happen. But think about it. If it was a negative impact, it will remain with me. So psychology says that for every one wrong word you say to a child, you need 17 positive words to erase it from the mind of that child. But where the challenge is we only have time to say one wrong word, and we hardly have the time to say the 17 right words that will erase.
Perhaps you've even said more of the wrong words.
Yes. Now imagine what we are heaping on these children every day because we are provoked. Yes, we have some out of control children.
Because I was going to say that, where is the place of balancing? Just so you don't say, okay, because I don't want to be seen as abusing my child, whether physically or emotionally, and then you just let the child, you know, just go on a free range.
There are out of control children and also out of control parents. You cannot have an out of control parent correcting an out of control child without damaging the child.
That's what I was saying about broken.
So the balance here that we're looking at is how to discipline out of control children without damaging. But because of anger, our own weaknesses that is already inside of us, we tend to become out of control with those children. And most times, we tend to forget that for adults, work is work. Do you understand? For children, play is work. When they scatter this place, to them, they are working. And if you notice the energy they put into it, I've seen children sweating just throwing things around, jumping everywhere. My 4-year-old daughter, she will jump on the couch, her legs will be up, her head will be down, she will be sweating.
With all sense of commitment.
Yes, so that is
That's her
work.
Yeah.
But to me, she's messing things up. So until we come to that understanding that for children, play is work, for adult, work is work, it helps us to overlook some things.
So on the part of the adult, you want to say, okay, even if I want to discipline or correct this child, I should watch my own temper too.
Yes.
I should watch what is coming out of my mouth.
Because sometimes, you know, it is said that everything that is done to the child must be in the best interest of the child. And some parents claim that what they did to that child that damaged the child, they were doing it in the best interest of that child. But look at the end of the day, it led to some damages. Okay. So parents will need to be cautious. These children will always provoke you, but have the understanding that they are children. And besides, there are other forms of punishment, other forms of discipline. You can ground them. You can say no cartoon for 2 hours. You must look for what gets to the child.
All right. Let me ask Doctor. She mentioned something, that broken people create broken people. It's a vicious cycle. I've heard the story of someone who went to school. She went to boarding school, and she was so badly psychologically brutalized that she became, after 3 months, 10 weeks of a term, she was brutalized in school mentally or psychologically. That when she came back, the person told me that one day her parents were not around, and she took every negativity she had experienced in school out on her younger one.
Siblings.
And she said she kept hitting her sister till she bled. Now, it also means that when you see people act that way, something is wrong. Not even to the child who's being abused at that time, because they are creating another person who will be abusive. How do we report these things? How do you then treat it? Because some people say, if you see your neighbor who's not sending their children to school, you should be concerned, because those children who are not going to school are threats to your own children down the line. How can we communally create a safer environment for our children? Doctor?
You know, when we were growing up as children, that was the experience. If you moved in the neighborhood, let's assume you want to buy chocolate, and then we had the British chocolate. You got to the chocolate person, the amount of money you give to them, if they see that you're not supposed to have that, they'll take it and tell you, go and call your parents. If everybody was, you know, like they said, the proverb says, when you have your baby in the womb, it's yours, but once you give birth, it becomes a community. Everybody takes it. That was what we had. And it's something that we need to find a way of bringing back, because civilization has made us to everybody for myself, my business, I'm not concerned, I take my eyes off. And so we are in that stage in our society where I'm not concerned with what's happening to you. But we're trying to bring it back to say, see, you need to be concerned when you see things. Now, reporting abuse of children. I think with over 26 states now enacted their laws, their child rights law. Yes, implementation is still a work in progress. But the essence is we can actually make reports. There are a lot of NGOs that are working that you can call. There are a lot of pro bono services. Mental health is increasing because even parents need mental health help. And intentional parenting is upmost now. Now, like she said, when your child is saying, I don't want this, I don't want this person, I don't want to go to this place, we need to actually listen to those things, because so we don't push beyond to get them to get into the main core of abuse itself. They're already showing signs that this person may have attempted something. And consciousness needs to come up with parenting in 21st century. It has to be intentional. You have to also know yourself, because we are also a product of how we were raised. And we were raised in a particular way, which is not the way today's children will be raised. You have to be more intentional. So you find that when things happen to our children, there are outlets to report, to seek help. when your child comes home and that has happened, of course, that child should not go back to that school. That's number one. First is to say the child is not going back there. Second is to get the child help. The child needs to either go through therapy. First, they even need to know what exactly happened to the child. And parents may not be the best people. Yes, the best people to actually get that out of the child. Or we think, oh, because we're the parents, we need to know exactly what happened to you. The child may just not open up to you. So you need to get professionals who ask, because we're becoming a more professionalized society when it comes to this particular area of trauma, of managing trauma. We are not, it's not just the regular counselor. Yeah. There's not a guidance counselor in the school that will tell you.
Yes,
exactly.
I guess we can go on and on about how to protect our children. We do hope that you watching there have learned one or two things about how much attention we still need to pay to our children and to our environment. We've been discussing, we've been focusing on the Nigerian child, and we've had Dr. Princess Olufemi Kayode, a child rights activist, to my right here. Thank you very much for coming on the program. We've also had Barrister Joy Etokudo, member, Lagos Child Protection Network. Thank you, ladies, for being part of this conversation. We'll take a short break now. When we come back, we'll be talking about how we can live better through floods. Join us again.